Greetings, listeners. Welcome to Consulting Between Friends. I am your host, Michael Holmes Jr. The midterm elections are on November 8th, 2022. This is your time to let your voices be heard. There are many important issues that can affect us for a lifetime if we don't vote. For example, the economy, education, climate change, and so many others. There has been different protests that means a lot to everyone. The one way to change the laws we don't agree with is to vote. There is much to think about when you are going to vote. Having a plan before going to vote can make everything easier. In this episode, I will let you know how to plan before going to the polls and what to pay attention to when at the polls. Let's discuss voting. Why does this privilege matter? We will return after a message from our sponsor. Everyone is always planning things, and advertising is needed to make it happen. So, if it's personal or business, let Pinpoint Designs and Images solve that problem. With Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC, you will receive quality work and professional service at a great price. The service that is offered: flyers, business cards, programs, invitations, photo books, ad booklets, and much more. Michael Holmes Jr., owner/principal designer of Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC. Contact me by email or social media. Email address is pinpointdesignsandImages@gmail.com, and Instagram Pinpoint Designs, and Facebook Pinpoint Designs and Images. We are back. Before you consider voting for any candidate, you need a plan. Look at voting as a game. If you don't prepare to play, there are different consequences that can stop you in your tracks. When you are planning to go vote, there is important information to know. Also, how to handle a situation if you run into trouble before voting. Voting game plan. Each state has different laws for voting. Check with your location before voting. 1. Know your polling location. Find out where to vote before Election Day. If you voted in the past, go back to your last polling location. 2. Bring a state ID or driver's license for identification. This is important information for poll workers to identify the person who is voting. Without proper identification, this will stop you from voting. 3. Uber or Lyft if you don't have transportation. Both of these rideshare companies will pick up and drop you off at your voting location. You can also ask a family member or a friend to bring you to the voting location. During election time, there are different organizations that offer a service to bring people to the voting location. 4. Early voting and absentee voting. Early voting is a way to vote if you are unable to vote on election day. Also, early voting is a great way to vote to not have to think about it on election day. 5. Vote by mail. This option is great if you are unable to vote in person, if you are out of town. If you vote in your city and you are unable to vote in person, this option is available. 6. A voter with a disability. If you have a disability, you can request help while voting. There is a federal law to protect people with disabilities to cast their vote. The poll workers are required to assist any voter in a wheelchair or any type of disability needing assistance. A person with a disability is allowed to bring a family member or a friend to the voting polls for assistance to cast their vote. After a short break, we will return. We are back. Ways to handle a situation at the voting polls. 1. If your name is not in the voting book. If you are at your polling location and the poll worker cannot find your name, ask for a provisional ballot. This ballot will allow the person to cast their vote. The person will have to fill the card or paper with their name and other identification that is needed to vote. You, the voter, have this right to ask the poll worker to check your name in the book and call the voters registration office to check their records. 2. Voting location hours. If you are in line before the polls close, you have the right to cast your vote by law. For example, if the polls close at 8 p.m. and you are in line before the last hour of closing, you are allowed to vote. 3. Voting machine problems and paper ballot problems. If you are at your voting location and the machine is not working, you have the right to request another machine to cast your vote. If you make a mistake casting your vote, you have the right to request another paper ballot. 4. Election problems that needs assistance. If you, the voter, believe your rights is being violated, there is a hotline to call if this happens. For example, the Election Protection Hotline at 1-866-687-8683. Once again, 1-866-687-8683. This will help the voter if their rights are being violated. There are also different organizations that will offer assistance with a service as well to ensure the person's rights. Organizations that assist with people's right to vote. 1. American Civil Liberties Union, known as ACLU. 2. National Association for the Advancements of Colored People, known as NAACP. 3. When We All Vote. 4. MoveOn.org. After a short break, we will return. We are back. In closing, I hope the information on voting is valuable to everyone. These elections are important and we all need to participate in them. I wanted to explain to everyone why your vote matters. With this knowledge, I hope everyone will have a better understanding of voting. One last thing, remember to support local businesses. And your vote is important. Use it wisely. Thank you for listening to Consulting Between Friends. This podcast is available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts, as well other platforms that are available. So like and subscribe. Need to contact us and leave us a comment? You can find us on Instagram at Consulting the letter B Friends. Once again, Consulting B Friends. An email address is consulting the letter B friends at gmail.com. Once again, consulting B friends at gmail.com. Consulting Between Friends now has a merch online store called Podcast Merch Headquarters. This is where you can buy merch to show your support for the podcast. Some items to choose from are t-shirts, tumblers, and hoodies, as well many other things I know you will appreciate. So take the time to review the items in the store. The link will be available in the podcast notes under Podcast Merch Headquarters. Consulting Between Friends appreciates the constant support. It means a lot. If you would like to support the podcast more, you can find me on Patreon at Consulting B Friends. Once again, at Consulting B Friends. The link will be in the description. Consulting Between Friends now has a way for listeners to share their feedback about the podcast. The listeners can now share their feedback on Discord. The link will be available in the podcast notes and on the podcast website. Thanks again for the support. If you have an extra minute, it would be greatly appreciated if you could answer a few questions regarding the quality of the podcast. The link will be in the description. Consulting Between friends. Thanks to everyone for making this possible. The host, Michael Holmes Jr., the producer and content creator, Michael Holmes Jr., the artwork cover, Michael Holmes Jr., original music, a DJ name slash, references, aclu.org, nsl.org, content distributor, My Producer Podcasts.